Check, check, check. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Alrighty. And 3, 2, 1. Welcome to The Peaceful Truth, the podcast where we talk about everything from women empowerment, feminism, and everything in between. You are joined by your host, Kenzie Meekbeck. Thank you guys so much for joining me for another week this week. I hope everything... 3, 2, 1. Welcome to The Peaceful Truth, the podcast where we talk about everything from women empowerment, feminism, and everything in between. You are joined by your host, Kenzie Meekbeck. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. For this week's episode, for the solo ones, I kind of like to get right into it, where I don't have a guest on. So for this week's episodes, we're talking about getting emotional. I feel like this podcast topic is personally very important to me because it is about emotions and mental health. I feel like when I was a kid, I went through a few struggles, and I think I've always had anxiety, but I didn't really know what it was. But as a kid, I went through some hard stuff. And I was terrified of going to seek help. I was terrified of going to a therapist because I felt like it meant that I was crazy. I felt like that means I was in the worst, darkest place you could ever be in. And I went once to a therapist, and I remember just thinking, this is awful. I hate it. It just feels so dark. And it might have been the chemistry between me and the therapist, but now that I'm an adult and I go to therapy all the time to talk about my emotions and to talk about my mental health, I found it's so important to be more open about it and more vulnerable about it, because it doesn't mean that a single thing is wrong with you. Life is freaking hard, and you gotta go seek help sometimes when you need it, or just kind of talk through it with someone, and it just makes you feel better. But this week's episode is kind of about mental health. It's also about emotions and mental health. I feel like emotions are a part of your mentality and a part of the health that you have on a day-to-day basis in your mind. So I think it's something important to talk about. So I wanted to talk about first the different emotional stereotypes I feel like that are in the U.S.'s culture in particular, because that's the main one I can honestly speak to. I feel like it's stereotyped that women are more emotional. It's also stereotypes that within that women are crazy, irrational, and hysterical. And that all of these stereotypes of women make us not fit for leadership roles. I remember when Hillary Clinton was running, and when people have talked about past presidents, is that, oh, she gets a period. What's going to happen on her period? She's going to be so unstable. It's not bad to have emotions. In fact, emotions can form intelligence, and emotional intelligence can make you deeply relate to human beings. Not only that, but it's also just sexist not to think that we can't make professional decisions just because we're a woman. And 3, 2, 1. I also think that there's a bunch of crap that men have to deal with emotions, and it sucks and it's awful, and I think it's one of the worst things that would probably, I can't speak to it actually, but I think it would be one of the harder things to deal with if I were a man. But men, the stereotype is that men aren't emotional, and if they are, it's considered weak. At least that's what I've heard. And I just don't think it's true. I feel like everyone's human, and it's just healthier to express. Men have emotion, men should be emotional, men should be able to express it just as much as women do, and women aren't weaker because of it, men aren't weaker because of it. So overall, why are these emotions so forbidden? I think that as a culture, we've characterized them as a weakness, as it's burdensome to others, even when you express your true feelings if it's not a positive one. And negative emotions mean that we're extreme, as in we're called crazy or not normal. And that jargon in general of crazy is just awful because I don't think anyone's crazy. I feel like people have to deal with things, and all people have emotions and different ranges of emotions and different things that impact them, and mental health and mental illness. And all of these things don't make you crazy, it just makes you human, and every human, no one's perfect. Every human has flaws. And those aren't even flaws. No one's perfect, you know? In fact, those imperfections make you beautiful. So, hi beings. What's that? 3, 2, 1. But why is it bad to have negative emotions, or why is it bad to even express emotion in public? Instead of addressing them, I feel like we suppress them, and that negativity can boil up. And I feel like it can, not always. I feel like people can suppress it, which is a negative thing into itself and can cause maybe sadness or extremely maybe go into depression. Again, I'm not a medical professional. This is just kind of what I've gathered from listening and paying attention. And again, it can boil maybe into aggressive action or even self-harm. But luckily, I feel like this is changing in society. This is actually, I feel like the millennial generation gets a ton of crap, but I feel like one of the things we do really great is be open about mental health and not make it into a negative. I think it's so positive that we treat it so openly, and that if you have an issue, I feel like in the most part, people are becoming more comfortable with seeking that help, which is wonderful. I feel like it will make the world a more emotionally intelligent and safe place. But I also wanted to ask, why the heck is vulnerability a weakness, and why isn't it considered a strength? I feel like opening up and showing who you are and showing the things, whether negative and positive, is vulnerable, and that vulnerability can let other people in, which can make people feel more included, and overall is a strength because you're strong enough to admit and be vulnerable. It's actually very strong to do it. But overall, I feel like emotional vulnerability is seen as a female weakness. And even though it's not a weakness, but it's the cultural norm of not sharing emotions, and it is in turn a sexist cultural trait to feel like emotions are negative, in my opinion. But emotions aren't even feminine. It shouldn't be gender stereotyped or even a bad thing. And also, why is it bad to be a female or to have feminine, traditionally what society calls feminine traits? Why is it bad in the first place? It's not. And we all have traits that are culturally stereotyped as masculine or feminine, but it's neither. Sometimes it's just a part of being a human being. So it's a short episode this week, but I just felt like it was something to talk about, and it's something near and dear to my heart. And I find it, once you learn and become embrace your emotional vulnerability, I feel like you become so much stronger, and you can even find empathy and sympathy in others that are going through difficult things. Everyone's fighting a hard battle, and I think that phrase and cliche is very true. What am I looking forward to this week? This week I am really looking forward to friendship. Not that I'm always not looking forward to this, but I feel like this week I'm so grateful for my friends. I'm so grateful for the humans in my life. And I'm just looking forward to being with them and living this life with them this week, because they've shown me so much kindness this week, and it just makes me happy. So that's what I'm looking forward to this week. I want you to think about the positive things in your life and what you're looking forward to. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for yet another week of The Peaceful Truth. We have exciting interviews coming up, and I cannot wait to share them with you. Have a great week. Bye, guys.